Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce George Conklin, a former president of the IATC Board of Directors. My name is Doug Punger. I'm co-leader of the Centennial History Project. To start with, George, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your history with Torch?
Well, professionally, I'm a retired professor, former chairman of the department at North Carolina Central University for 19 years. And my professional interest was on, and is on, the third world, family, especially in India, and also on issues like Muslim suicide, Muslim family, and infant mortality, and homicide also, cross-nationally.
I know you've been a member of the Durham Chapel Hill Club for a long time, but you've also served in positions at the IATC level. Why don't you tell us about your role on the IATC leadership?
Well, my wife and I started going to the conventions way back. I think we've been to 16 of them. And we, at that time, got more familiar with the IATC. Up until that time, I was president of the local club, Durham Chapel Hill, twice. But we didn't really know what IATC did until later.
Then sometime, I guess, 2014-15, you became a regional director?
Well, yes. That position became available because the person inhabiting the slot had served out 6 years and was ready to pass it on. Owen from the club in Virginia was ready to pass it on. Blacksburg, Virginia, Montgomery County Club.
Okay.
And so that's in Region 8. So I applied for the position, and so did Walter Van Eck, and so we had an election, and I won the election, and I took the position at that time.
Then about 2017, you ran for the position of president-elect or president?
Well, that was almost by accident, and because the person who was the designated president-elect and the past president both resigned. I was never told why. But we were at a business meeting in the winter meeting in Baltimore. And so it was on the agenda, did anybody want to fill the position? And I volunteered and was seconded by Roger Kramer from the San Antonio Club. And I was appointed to that position by the board, 7 in favor and 2 abstentions.
Okay. And so you served 1 year as interim president, and then you were elected again for 2-year term?
Well, I had to stand election.
Right.
And that was a contested election. And I won that election. But I would not normally have taken over the position until Dick Fink served out his final year. But Dick, to our surprise, at the first meeting I was on, also resigned. Okay. And so I ended up 1 year as the fill-in and 2 years of my normal elected position.
Okay. So during your 3 years as ITC president, what were some of the major issues or developments you'd like to share with the group?
Well, I had several agendas I wanted to take care of. We needed to straighten out the finances and get the budget running according to its published standards. And also, from a number of years before, I was very concerned about our magazine. The stuff was not available in the printed version, except for 1 copy in the archives. And thus, at the end of the month, when people cleaned off the coffee table, our authors lost their prominence, if you will, or their visibility. Mm-hmm. And so I started putting it on the web under thetorchmagazine.org as a shortcut to it.
Okay.
And I think there are 24 issues I put up.
I presume you attended Torch conventions. Is there any memorable experience from Torch conventions you'd like to share with us?
Well, I think the most memorable thing in the Torch conventions, and both my wife and I went to those together, was that we enjoyed the tours and the local papers.
Okay.
We did not find the Paxton papers to be the best papers of the conventions. Occasionally they were, but generally we enjoyed the local papers featuring how things work locally. For example, prisoners of war in Iowa and how they handled that, because they were basically farmhands. So, you know, things like that we didn't understand before we went there.
I understand there's been quite a number of changes in the position of executive secretary or business manager, and I think it changed 2 or 3 times during your tenure. Can you share with those changes with us?
Well, different people had them, and they have different concepts of what that job entailed. And our last one with OMG managers wanted minutes kept like the school board in North Carolina.
Spring of 2017, the then executive secretary, Jim Coppinger, is that right?
Coppinger.
Coppinger.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
resigned.
Now, he resigned, and we had to look around for another company. And one of the companies that had been looked at before Association Builders was hired was the OMG, Alfred Management Group. And they are an accredited group, and they insisted on procedures and following the bylaws before bills were paid. And so they handled that very nicely. They had problems with our membership lists where we would edit them locally because it involved finances and dues payments, and so
Dues are based upon membership, right?
yeah, and so they basically took that over.
Okay. Did they do a good job keeping up with the membership records?
Well, they did what they were sent. The problem was that in the past, and right up to the time they took over, was that the mailing list for the magazine was never properly reconciled with the membership list.
Okay.
And so some people were getting the magazine who were no longer members, and a few members were not getting it at all.
Okay.
And so since I'm a member of 2 clubs and my wife was, you know, we should be getting 3 or 4 of them, and sometimes we only got one, and you know, whatever.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about your term as president of ITC?
Well, my feeling is that our purpose of existence was really the ideas that are expressed in the magazine, because that's what we do with every meeting. We sit down and we have a talk, as well as supper and a drink maybe. And that it's important to preserve our history more than one copy in the library somewhere. And that's why the torchmagazine.org was the site that I was keeping going, because that is our history, and that's what I think we need to preserve.
Okay. Has the Torch membership benefited you in any way?
Personally?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's kept me alive in terms of looking at ideas, and I think that that's very important to keep yourself mentally stimulated with good ideas. I hope that in the future that clubs will go back to getting members giving talks. In the past, I've seen last few years that invited guests are, you know, not the tradition of Torch, but we are the tradition, not the member invited guests.
Any concluding remarks you'd like to share?
No, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, George. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.